That's breaking news. Conservative pundit and the founder of Turning Point USA, a conservative grassroots organization, Charlie Kirk, has been murdered, assassinated at an event at Utah State University. Speaking engagement was pretty outdoors, large crowd. Um, the shooting was pretty morbid. There's a close-up shot of him getting shot in the neck, and then he was rushed to the hospital where he was later pronounced dead. And while everyone's rushing to judgment and while everyone's racing for a headline, I'm actually going to do a quick video about what I think the long-term repercussions could mean. Not I'm saying that this is going to happen, but what they could mean, because what we need are cooler heads to prevail, and what this could mean for the long run regarding the people of the United States is here we are. Charlie Kirk has died after being shot at an event in Utah. President Trump says conservative activist Charlie Kirk, the CEO and co-founder of the conservative youth movement Turning Point USA, has died after being shot Wednesday at an event at Utah State University. President Donald Trump said in a Truth Social post. Shooting comes amid a spike in attacks on political figures in the United States across all parts of the ideological spectrum, mostly conservative, have been the victims of this. The victim, 31, Kirk, personified the pugnacious populist conservatism that had taken over the Republican Party in the age of Trump. He launched his organization, Turning Point USA, in 2012, targeting younger people and venturing onto liberal leaning college campuses where many GOP activists were nervous to tread. And he would go and debate issues, the domestic issues about transgenderism, past events like 9/11, the Second Amendment with college kids, college kids, ignorant college kids, mainly freshmen and sophomores. He barely would debate anybody that could possibly refute his points. And that was the whole process to make the left look stupid. Well, that's not much of a challenge. Turn this around, have somebody, educated and knowing what they're talking about in a specific area, debating Charlie Kirk on a specific point, then most likely Charlie Kirk would lose because he's speaking at a conservative point of view, not uh, any real valid point of view. But that was the whole point anyway, to embellish and try to manipulate and propaganda young minds. You could twist this around and say that this goes on at socialist universities. Yes, they do. The whole point is to divide the public into an ideological quagmire, which is what's happening right now. Um, and here you have here Megyn Kelly and Glenn Beck. They're on Fox, and they know him personally. It's not like I'm making fun of these people because it's not the right time to do this. But I just want to show you here. Here this is a live video, but this I paused this here just to show you the emotional moment of when Kirk had passed.
That's right. There are news outlets reporting the worst right now, Glenn. I don't know what I'm waiting for before I report it. I trust just the news. I trust Deseret. What are we waiting for, like the AP to say it? We don't trust them more than we trust these.
See, that's the point, right? They're trusting their outlets that acquiesce to their worldview. They don't trust any other outlet. Meanwhile, major outlets, while they don't report the news honestly, but they're not outright lying. They're misreporting the news or misinterpreting the news, either on purpose or not. You don't know that. You're not in the editorial board, right? You don't know what's missing. You don't know what's being manipulated unless you take the time to fill in the blanks. But that takes time.
They're reporting that Charlie has died. That he's dead. At the age of 31.
Now, they know Charlie. Okay. What I'm saying is this I'm not telling you to make fun of these people, showing you how fervent they are, right? This is a genuine reaction. They knew Charlie Kirk personally, outside of his ideological beliefs. Okay. I don't know Charlie Kirk. I don't have a position on Charlie Kirk regarding, his death. I think it's tragic. Violence only begets violence. His murder whether it would be from a leftist shooter or a socialist shooter or a communist shooter or even a minority shooter, which will probably be blamed on either or of this, is still tragic. He's a family man. People love him. You can disagree with Charlie Kirk. You can vehemently disagree with Charlie Kirk, but you have no right to kill Charlie. Just as these two, who over the years have made slight about the murders of people overseas, or even here in the States, did they cry for minorities who were killed by either police or by, the hands of others? No, they don't know them. They don't care. Rush Limbaugh used to have a talk show where he would make fun of AIDS victims who died. I'm not saying they're Rush Limbaugh, but I don't trust Megyn Kelly or Glenn Beck to act honestly in this position, because if the shooter is a leftist, these two, along with other conservative pundits, are going to blame the entire left, every atheist, every socialist, every communist, every Democrat, for the death of Charlie Kirk and for others like Charlie Kirk. I'm going to prove to you why, this is the case. You can have empathy for Charlie Kirk as a human being. Personally, for me, Charlie Kirk was disingenuous. Was it intentional? No, because he really believed in his ideals. His ideals are a conservative worldview, God, country, above all else, a love for the Second Amendment, anti-immigration, a very moderate view on Israel, and of course, being very detrimental to the Gulf, anything Islamic. And the only good thing he saw about minorities was that their prospects for potentially being conservative, if he could propagandize them. That's what most of these high-level conservative pundits do. And don't get me on religion, please. These people are the least religious of all. So even though their tears are genuine, the worst thing I could think of right now is the long-term effects, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Let's just watch this for a second.
Which he would have to be if that video was real.
There's no way he survived that. The only good thing is, it had to have happened quickly.
Right. Right.
This is coming from a guy who was all for the Iraq War. 1 million people were killed. Did he show this type of sympathy for the Iraqis? No. This is why I think he's a hypocrite. I think he's genuinely being sad here. Yes, Charlie Kirk was a friend of his. He's crying for Charlie Kirk. That's genuine. This is genuine. But he's a hypocrite. You could say two things, and both could be true. This is real empathy going on here for Charlie Kirk. You get it? But he could care less about anybody else. And, Fox News has been guilty of, the worst type of propaganda outside of CNN. I consider them the same. There's nothing different about either one, with the exception of the different color flag that they fly. But they too are guilty of supporting conflicts that kill people, or making slight of the deaths of others, in which, because they criticize their political affiliation. minorities as well. Now, what I mean by, what's going on recently regarding the conservative uh, criticisms of Democrats, which has come into fire the last month. Just recently, not was it 2 days ago? What about this one? Okay. Here you have the murder of a woman on a train in Charlotte. Suspect in Charlotte's train stabbing that killed a Ukrainian refugee is charged with a federal crime. Right here, look at it. Blonde, blue hair woman murdered right in front of a train full of minorities. Stabber was African American. Here he is. Blaring his picture, rightfully so, by the way. The murder. For me, execution. Give what he gave. That's what I believe, right? But then you think of Gandhi, right? And he's right. An eye for an eye is what, the Hammurabi code of law is. But what Gandhi said was an eye and an eye makes the whole world blind. What he's meaning by that is that violence begets violence, like I say, and like what the Bible says, even though I'm atheist. So you see what's going on here, okay? You're getting this repetition. Oh, look, the left loves violence, and it's against conservatives. It's against white people. I'm seeing on YouTube a disturbing trend of alpha males, conservative YouTube channels, talking about black fatigue, meaning here's a bunch of ghetto thugs acting inappropriately, criminally, immorally. And the comments is what I read because it says everything. And then you have tens of thousands on some of these videos. And they're all coming out of the woodwork saying they never should be in society. And look, I never thought we would get to this point. But here we are declaring it as, a justified position. Is there crime in minority driven neighborhoods? Yes. More so than other areas? Yes. But there is not a simplistic reason of saying, well, they enjoy violence. That would be the simplistic point of view. The long-term effects would mean that you have to think outside the box, outside of the ideological or human construct process, meaning you can't be persuaded by ideals. You have to look at it as is. Why are minority neighborhoods so crime-ridden? You think Hispanics or blacks just woke up and said, I'm going to be a criminal today? I'm going to do this today? No. But does that give them reason to do so? No, I'm not giving them, carte blanche to do whatever they want. This took decades. I lived in a ghetto recently called Tremont, Bronx. I'm glad I did. Because for one, it motivates me never to go back there again, but I did it on purpose. Because I wanted to see for myself. I wasn't there for long, 2 months. I wanted to see for myself just how degrading and mentally exhausting it is to live in such conditions. And it's even worse than I imagined. But then you ask yourself, oh, why do they want to live like that? Why don't they care? Look, when you're surrounded by tens of thousands of people, I mean literally tens of thousands, older people that have been through enough, economically deprived, and you're surrounded by stores like hat stores, barbershops, and the only food you can get are in Seatown and Associated limited stocks because they can't afford everything else because they get robbed all the time, right? So there's no like Whole Foods here. There's no fruits and vegetables being sold except on the side of the street. And all you have these sugary items, which cause an imbalance in your head and you get fatter. You don't care. You become lazy, denigrated. And the only thing around you is either, limited employment activity or the underworld activity. And when you have a penchant for believing in faith, which there's a lot of churches in these areas, to hope that things change, and nothing ever does, because the change comes from within you, and they have to believe it. But when you have decades and decades of people being debased, unhealthy, uneducated, you think the decisions of being a criminal were made overnight? No, it's not. It's a decades-long process. And that's what I'm saying. And what does this all mean for the long run? Is that, this is not a left and right issue. It never has been. But the country wants you to believe that there is a conservative, white, religion, Christian dominated background that is going to save the world or save the United States. The left is coming from at it at a point where we have freedom of religion. Other religions need to be practiced. Both can coexist. But the fanatics are running the show. And when you have Trump and Biden representing you, you have old senile men with very backward antisocial views, very divisive views. And when you look at a guy like this, you say, well, look, he's black, he's ugly, he's got, dreads, he stabbed a woman from behind, there were other minorities on the train, and why didn't they help? When you look past the skin color, because the skin color means nothing, it doesn't make you a criminal like this. It doesn't mean that you're a criminal. That's a mindset. And the mindset is not colored. It's what you learned, what you experienced. And some of these people are mentally deficient on top of it. Some, not saying all. That doesn't give him a right to kill people. But you could see what the conservatives want. And what the conservatives want is that they want a strict gun amendment regarding the left, because that's what they're going to ask for. Is what is my prediction. And this is a dangerous future. Because the two things at the forefront of both the Democrat and Republican Party, like I said in previous videos, for the Democrats, it's the Second Amendment. For the Republicans, it's immigration. Minorities, people of colored skin. And what this means for all of us. Well, for the Second Amendment, this is the most important one. To me, it's the most important amendment in the whole Constitution, because the Second Amendment is the constitutional right to bear arms. And it says that when you read the Second Amendment, it's quote, I'll do it the best of my ability, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the right of the state, to the right of the freedom of the state, and the right of the people to secure arms should never be infringed. Democrats, for the last 30, 40 years, since the rise of mass shootings, have been at war with the Second Amendment, stating that we should regulate guns. I can understand that position. Way too many people have guns. Usually the guns are in the wrong hands. Non-law abiding citizens. Does that mean non-law abiding citizens are Democrats, socialists, African Americans, Hispanics, illegal immigrants? No, it doesn't. Now, legislatures, especially Democrats, have created statutory laws. Now, what are statutory? Well, the federal law states that Congress, which passed statutes to regulate firearms, right, including the National Firearms Act of 1934, which regulates certain firearms and which institute federal background checks for firearm purchases. I'm for this. The states have a little bit of a different view, and they have enacted laws Well, they enacted their own gun control measures that implement the restriction to right to bear arms. I'm against this. There are some examples over the years that include laws against concealed carry, background checks, like things like, waiting periods. I think guns should be given by the government to a law-abiding citizen. But we don't have a militia anymore, thank you to the Dick Act. We don't have a federal militia. We have the National Guard. We have, the U.S. Army, but we don't have a militia. Now, what are the differences between the constitutional and the statutory? Well, the Second Amendment is a fundamental constitutional right. Which, while statutes are laws passed by the legislative bodies that operate within the framework of the Constitution. In the historical context, the Second Amendment has roots in the English common law and the colonialist understanding of the right to self-defense. And there's a debate between the Democrats and Republicans over this. What does this mean? What I'm trying to tell you is this. If this continues, this violence against conservatives are going to turn around and use the points made in the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025. Even though Donald Trump is against this, the people under him who are much more powerful than him in terms of influence within a subsection of the Republicans, which are the hard right evangelicals, and they're growing. The anti-Jews, the anti-immigrations. They're going to use this legislation that the Democrats made against them. Now, this hurts all of us. How does this hurt all of us? Because I believe that every single law-abiding American should have a right to bear arms. Why? Because those in the Constitution, the people who made the Second Amendment, made that amendment the most protected amendment of all, because they feared that the people would make a government and the government would turn on them using the army. A tyrannical government. Now, I say to you, those are the Democrats, those are the Republican affiliation. Would you not agree that the governments under Biden or Trump are tyrannical? All you have to do is take one look at what's going on overseas. And that they could do that to other people, you don't think that they could do that to us? You already see the conservatives, you see Democrats as the enemy. To the Democrats, you see Trump supporters as the enemy. You're already there. And if a Democrat president were to win in the next election, they would use Trump's laws to regulate gun regulation on conservatives, meaning that both sides will be unarmed. This is what I mean about looking at the long term. Stop racing for a headline. Talk about what this could mean in the future, outside of ideological lens. Take a look what the media are doing and saying and what they're criticizing about. Are they being honest in their reporting? No. The fifth column is compromised. And we need to do something about it, or it's too late. We won't have a country to protect anymore. And if you think the country should be Christian, evangelical, white, gun-abiding, or, filled with socialists, communists, anarchists, atheists, unarmed, with no common law, either perspective is a failure of the state. Now that's cool. Now I'm just talking on the base premise of domestic issues. Don't get me started on federal issues. Federal issues are even more alarming and damning. And what they see and view for the people themselves. I mean, the Obama administration was a great example of this. Look what he did. He took Bush's policies and put them on steroids. I mean, I remember, I'm old enough to remember the Bush Jr. advisors being in complete awe of what Obama was doing. Like we could never get away with that, including the wiretapping of every single American using phone companies here without a warrant. Bush would never think of something like that. And he was for getting data from the NSA regarding every single American. I'm just giving that as an example. So the laws that Trump will make, if a Democrat wins, will be used against them, against conservatives. There won't be a right and left anymore. You'll be destroyed because you'll be seen as the enemy. The enemy to who? The state. Those in power. Because they don't see it right and left. They see it as us against them. You, the people, have fallen for it. And you have to realize that you fell for it. There is no right. There is no left. There's no black. There's no white. There's no Jew. There's no Muslim. There's no Christian. We're all from the universe. Even as an atheist, do I believe in a higher power? Probably so. Do I believe it's a monotheistic God? No. Because your race, your religion, your creed is irrelevant. These are human constructs learned to you. They're not natural. You weren't born a white Republican. You weren't born a black Democrat. You were told this. You were brought this. It's like the Matrix. Unplug and act as a unified front against the very people who made you react and feel this way. It's a battle of good and evil. Just like the guy who stabbed the woman. Was it because, he's black and she's white, even though he says, I got that white girl? Is that a condemnation of the black community? Well, according to conservative circles, it sure is. Take a look at the YouTube channels that are promoting this black fatigue. Don't fall for it. And the death of Charlie Kirk is tragic, but I'm looking at the bigger picture here. Conservatives will blame this on Democrats and immigration. And God forbid, terrorist attack comes under Trump's watch, it'll be magnified times 25. And they'll pass regulations against those who identify as, a Muslim or a Democrat, because they'll blame it on them. Your immigration policies have done this. And then later on, like I said, if you have a Democrat president, he'll basically say, well, the terrorists were Orthodox. We have to limit regulation gun laws to those who identify as, ultra Orthodox or Orthodox, or as white, or as Christian. And when you do this, you have unarmed the Christians, the Muslims, the Jews, the blacks, the whites, the Democrats, the Republicans, and we're all unarmed. And then all of a sudden, the only thing left standing who have the weapons are the people who told you that the Second Amendment should be no more and that we need to get rid of it. And that the immigrants and the laws that protect them are no more. And that we need to keep America away from outsiders. The borders aren't to keep the outsiders from getting inside. The borders are going to be from us, the insiders, getting out from what's coming. Now, this all could be product of my imagination. I could be dead wrong about everything I'm willing to say. Or as I said here today, damn straight. I'm only speculating. But ask yourself, how far-fetched is it?